try this again.
Okay.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Shattering Ceilings. It's Lauren.
And Megan. And we are here today to talk about self-worth. So I think this is a great segue from last week's episode. We were talking all about making decisions, taking action, holding the vision, the greater perspective. And sometimes, at least in my personal experience, it can be more difficult to do that if we struggle with our own value and our own self-worth. So we want to talk about that a little bit today. We're going to get started with Lauren sharing a little bit about her journey with self-worth. I'll tell you a little bit about mine, and we'll see where this goes.
Awesome. So yeah, this is something that I have dealt with for most of my life, and I wasn't really aware of it until probably around my 30s is when I really became aware. And it was through personal growth that I had this awareness that this is something that I struggled with. And growing up, lack of self-worth looked like me chasing accolades and praise and people pleasing because that is how I thought that I got love and recognition. And I guess that feeling of being seen or heard, came from, again, look at me, look what I did, look what award I got, or, whatever it may be. So that was something that, again, through my whole life I did. And, it's one of those things where I don't regret it because it also gave me kind of like the drive, and the hustle to get to where I'm at. And I think that if I didn't have it, like maybe I wouldn't have fought so hard, to be seen or heard or for that praise. But then it became an issue where I started realizing that things were just never enough. Like I was on this just path of chasing every freaking carrot that was kind of put in front of me, thinking that I was going to feel better about myself or feel content or feel some kind of like satisfaction after achieving things. And I think it was when my husband finally said to me, he goes, Laura, it's just never enough with you. It's like one thing after another, because once you hit this, it's going to be like, okay, well, what's next? And so him kind of starting that conversation made me realize, and I would always get so, and I mean, I could probably tear up now about it. I would get so choked up when I would go to a retreat and people would like speak life over me and say how worthy I was or called and qualified and all those kinds of things. And I would really get upset hearing those things because it just triggered so much emotion in me, because I guess I just didn't believe it.
Interesting. So when Bob and you started having that conversation, like how did your relationship with your own self-worth start to change?
How did it start to change? I guess I realized that people loved me for me. They weren't around because of what I was doing. Like they were my friend or loved me and had relationships with me because of me and just who I was. And I honestly think what really changed me though was finding peace in, again, letting those people speak life over me. And probably even like, guys, you may get uncomfortable with this. I almost feel uncomfortable, but I shouldn't. Like, this is not going to be a churchy episode or a religious episode, but like knowing that or hearing that God made me in his image and that like I was just given worth because I'm here, because I'm
because
human,
you exist, you are enough.
that I exist, that I'm enough. And having to hear that like over and over and over again. And there's like, guys, I've said this before, like I have it tattooed on me, like I am enough. Like I have another one that says like daughter of the king. Like I need reminders in my face, literally, that I am enough. And it's probably my biggest message to other people too, because I know I'm not the only one that struggles with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, even between the two of us on this podcast, like you are not the only one that struggles with it because I
tell us about you. I just
I do as well
myself. Yeah.
Yeah. So my experience is actually really different than yours. Which I think is an interesting point to bring up because everybody experiences this very differently. So where you were chasing the accolade, I have been pretty mediocre. in everything that I do. Like I half-ass, no, for real, like I half-ass everything that I do in my whole life. Or I'll like be really good at the beginning and I'll put in a bunch of effort and then I'm not satisfied with my effort and then it like trails off. Um,
Mm,
but it kept me, my lack of self-worth has kept me from chasing after things, um, questioning decisions that I made, like their lack of trust in myself, really. Like even thinking back to when I was a cheerleader,
mhm,
uh, tumbling was something I always struggled with because I
mhm,
had to trust myself to
right,
flip over and not hurt myself. If somebody else, I think I've talked about this on here before, if somebody else was standing close enough to me that they could come and catch me,
mhm,
if I fucked up,
mhm,
I'd throw anything. I was great at tumbling, just wouldn't do it if there wasn't somebody standing there to hold my hand. And
mhm,
that's how I've done a lot of things through my life. I look for partnership and relationship, somebody to hold my hand that I believe is capable of doing what I don't think I'm capable of doing. And that's where I I thrive.
wow,
And I mean, in my human design, it's interesting because one of the things that they said is like you work best in a community. Like you need to find
mhm,
your partner in crime, and that's how you do
mhm,
stuff. And that's great to know now because it's changed like the way that I look at that dynamic.
right,
But for a long period of time, like I felt like I relied on other people because I was incapable. Um, of just being of thriving, really. And I feel like I've
mhm,
just skated by my whole life and I don't know where it started from because I grew up in a home where I was shown love and told often like you're pretty, you're smart, you can do anything, follow
right,
your dreams, all those things. But for whatever reason it didn't land and I would hear that stuff and like be like, oh, okay, that's cute that you think that, but like
mm,
actually I can't, I suck. Um
mm. Which is interesting
so I don't
because,
know.
again, like we grew up with two totally different backgrounds. Like I didn't hear that enough, so I fought for that. You heard that all the
Mm,
time, but still didn't believe it, which is
no.
crazy to me, you know?
Right. And I've never really failed at
No.
anything. I've also never been like the best at anything, but I seek relationships with people that I like. That's what drew me to Aaron. He was the fucking best. And like he fucking ruined curves in our classes. He was, you know, a, a highly decorated athlete at a world level. Like, so I seek people. A lot of my friends are very successful in what they do, and it's what I crave for myself. But the story, like, I don't know, I kind of feel like a leech, or like somebody, like I was talking to you about this before we hopped on here. Like somebody did something nice for me this weekend. A
Right.
family member invited us to dinner. We're going through some shit right now, and my initial thought was they're doing this out of pity because they love me, but like because I'm not capable of taking care of this myself. Like I can't
Mhm.
handle cooking dinner. And it's such a silly story. And hearing it, it sound like I would tell
Mhm.
anybody else, like, shut the fuck up. I'm
Right.
doing this because I love you. Like I want to, everybody needs love, everybody needs support, everybody needs help sometime.
Right.
But for me, whenever I take help, like it in my body, it lands as I am not enough. And somebody sees me
Mm.
at not being enough. So they're reaching down to help pull me up.
Right.
Um,
I think that's pretty common when it comes to help because I think that,
yeah.
you know, for a long time, and I mean, you even still give me nudges at times about seeking help, is that I don't want to appear like I can't do it or that I
Mm,
don't have it together or weak is the word that comes to mind. Like I never want to appear
yeah.
weak. You know, nobody wants to appear weak. And what we fail to realize is that number one, like you just said, people love us and they want to help and they genuinely want to help. And they also have purpose in that and that fulfills their purpose in doing it. And just like, you know, we want our own selves to have a fulfilled purpose, like we have to allow others, you know, to help us to do the same, right? And
Absolutely.
the
And we got
other
to get
thing
out
I
of our
just
own way.
yeah, get out of our own way. And the other thing I just want to say to you is that like it's so crazy your perspective on yourself because I look at you and I'm like, wow, like you know so much shit. Like I often think like, I mean, this is me being vulnerable right now. Like your vocabulary is like so much greater than mine and you're so smart, you know what I mean? So like to me, like I look at you and I just can't even believe that you would ever feel that way about yourself or feel like you've never done anything really well because every time I talk to you, like you are an expert in so many different areas. You know
Ugh,
what I mean? So it's just
that
crazy.
makes me cringe.
Right. And right? Like that makes you cringe. And
Yeah,
I'm like, that's crazy, you know?
I know. But like, I mean, that I think that's a great example. And like now in my 30s, especially, I think in like the last 5 years, it's really started to click where like my relationship around it is changing. Before, I lived in that space and I
Mm,
didn't know how to get myself out of it.
right.
And I realized that a lot of it comes with like the level of expectation I set for myself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe that is a part of people telling you your whole life that you are this, you can be this. And I think about this a lot with my kids. Like, um, how do I support them and show them
Mm-hmm.
love and not say you're so smart, you're so pretty, because that puts a level of pressure, right? And I, in my eyes, well, if I'm so smart, then I should have the best grades. If I
Mm-hmm.
have a meal prep business, it should be the most successful. If
Mm-hmm.
I am an acupuncturist, like I should have all of the info. And then I hear somebody else that's an acupuncturist sharing stuff from a different perspective, and I'm like, fuck, I'm like not that smart because I didn't think about that. And it's
Well,
just like, it's this unrealistic level of expectation.
and I think going back to that, even listening to you, because there's often times where we'll have a conversation and our perspectives are completely different. And it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that one of us is like greater than the other. It's just like we have, just like growing up, we have different perspectives on things. We're different people, we're different human designs, we're different ages, different everything. And
Yeah.
so, you know what I mean? Like for me, like I tell my kids, like again, how I was raised, and guys, I trust me, I had a great childhood. It's just I didn't have parents that told me things like that. I didn't. You know what I mean? Or even like being told like I'm proud of you, I love you. Like that wasn't, but my
Mhm.
kids, oh my gosh, every day it's like I love you, I'm proud of you. I'm pushing that. And again, I don't know how that's going to show up because obviously like Megan had a childhood where she was told all those things and she's still not feeling that. So that goes for me to assume that this is an inside job. No matter
Mm.
what external validation we have on the outside, like this is still something that we have to determine our own value, our own worth. And how do we do
Yeah.
that? So,
Yeah. We
Meg,
have to decide it ourselves.
right. So you have some questions, Meg, that you wanted to ask about that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to throw it out there for you guys to think about, like, how do you set your own value? What is that criteria? What does it look like? Um, is it like me, an unrealistic level of expectation? Is it the drive to feel love and feel like you're enough? Is it is it physical attributes? Is it the car you
Mhm.
drive, the house you drive, the job that you have? Is it the relationships that you hold? Like,
Mhm.
what, if you think about, where does my worth come from? Like, what makes you worthy? What would
Mhm.
make you worthy if you do not feel worthy enough now?
Mhm.
Because let's pause for a minute. This needs to be said. And it's something that, Laura, I'm giving you credit for, because you mentioned it before we started this, that like this needs to be the underlying message. You are worthy.
Right.
We are all worthy.
Right.
We are existing on this planet, no matter what your religious or spiritual background is. When it comes down to it, guys, it is like 1 in a billion chance
Right.
that you were the egg that got fucking fertilized by the
Fertilized.
sperm and carried through to a viable pregnancy and then have survived
Right.
infancy and childhood to become an adult. Like,
Yeah.
the act of miraculousness that it takes for us to be alive
Yeah.
in
And
itself, it shows that you are enough.
yeah.
We
No
are
one
all
can
here
take you.
for a reason.
Right, we
No.
are, and no one can determine that, and no one can take away from that, and nothing you can do or say can take away from that, and I think that needs to be said too, because
Yeah.
I think especially, like, you can see it in children growing up, but it's the same thing in adults too. There's things that we do or say that aren't always the brightest, or, we make mistakes, obviously, and then we tend to beat ourselves up and tell ourselves how stupid we were, or whatever it might be, or
Yes.
we feel. Again, it could be shame, it could be guilt, it could be a lot of different things, and that takes away from our own self-worth. And like again,
Yeah.
it's you are not your performance. You are not how you look. You are not the car you drive. You're not the money in your bank account. You're not that. You are you. And because of that, again, you are worthy just the way that you are. And
Yeah.
it, it's easy sometimes for someone else to say that for other people, right? But it's again, it really is the work of a lifetime, I think, for you to really believe it about yourself. And if you already have that, God bless you, because that is amazing. I think that most people do
Yeah.
struggle with this feeling and don't always talk about it, especially men, like
Mm.
I know, I'm not going to air out everything about my husband, but I know that he struggles with that at times. And I'm sure lots of men do, right? Because there's a lot of pressure on them as well.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. And sometimes kind of like going back to what Meg said, a lot of, um, oh gosh, I'm going to lose the word right now, but a lot of expectation that's unrealistic for them, like how they should be, what they should have, that kind of thing, what they should
Right.
provide, that kind of thing. Um,
Right.
so I think the conversation goes back to, again, the questions that Megan just asked, like, where are you basing this from?
Hmm.
Are those
And how
things
can we change our
right?
relationship with it? Like,
Yeah.
with this being a lifetime thing, you can see it. If you're a parent, you see it showing up in your kids from a very young age. My kids are
Mhm.
4 and 6. My 4-year-old hasn't really hit so much. My 6-year-old, it's starting to come into play.
And I
Like
have a
I
9-year-old,
can
and
tell you that this is, yeah,
and it's really coming out now, and we haven't even hit, like, preteen
junior
or
high.
teenage, and I'm
Yeah.
just like,
Oh,
"Oh my gosh," like, I mean, it's coming out, like, how he looks, how much he weighs, his like, he's very much a rule follower, so, like, he tries to come off as a badass, and, like, my husband told me the other day, he's like, "Wyatt, like, I know that deep down, like, you're a sweet boy and you wanna do it, like, you just wanna be happy, like, you don't have to pretend that you're some Billy badass right now." You know
yeah.
what I mean? So it's crazy, and, like, knowing this, I know I have to tread very carefully with him, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think it opens up the conversation, like the conversations that we're having with ourselves, just to take a moment on parenting.
Mhm,
Um, my unexpert, but practice with my own kids' advice.
mhm,
Um, the conversations that we're working on and having with ourselves are conversations that I think are worth having with our kids. So
100%.
teaching them from a young age, like, hey, these things are going to come up. There are going to be things in your life where you don't feel good enough. You see
Mhm,
somebody that has something that you don't have, but
mhm,
like, how do we work on that relationship, that self-love relationship, so that they don't have to have those same long-term struggles that we do? Because that's really, like, for myself, that's what's lacking. It's a lack of self-love, right?
mhm,
Because if
mhm,
I loved myself, I would see my own value.
mhm.
Why I don't love myself in the same way that I hope for everybody else and with the same eyes that I see everybody else, I don't know. I feel
Right,
like that's part of the human condition, and I may be wrong about
right.
that, but
I agree with you there. I think naturally we are negative, you know what I mean? And so,
critical.
critical, right, that it was a part of our survival, you know what I mean? And we still have that
Yeah,
old
absolutely.
brain, I think, that is always telling us, like, we need to do more, have more, be more, whatever. Um, and I think it's a part of growth too, like learning just to be,
Yeah,
right? Like that's
absolutely.
learning to be still, with
Yeah.
yourself, and that whole, like, letting judgment go. Like that's the ultimate goal,
Mhm.
I believe, in my opinion, for myself, is like to get to a point where there's no judgment, not for me giving anyone else judgment, but also for myself. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah,
that's the
totally.
hardest one. And so how can we do this? How can we learn to love ourselves and learn to value ourselves? What is the work? I mean, for me, it's like a knowing. And I know that's, like, not always the answer that people want to hear. It's like a decision that you have to make, like decide that I am good enough. I am worthy. And if you
Mhm.
have to, again, post that all around until you get it, or sometimes journal it out, like whatever it is, it's what you're listening to, it's what you're watching, it's
How you're speaking to
how you're
yourself.
speaking.
I mean, that's
Mhm,
my personal opinion. I think
mhm,
that's the biggest thing. Because
mhm,
no matter what's happening outside, like, you can listen to a podcast, you can read a book, you can feel good for a second off of whatever it is, but until we change the conversation that we're having with ourselves,
mhm,
nothing is going to change. Nothing's going to change permanently. Like,
mhm,
and from my own experience, that has been the shift.
mhm,
It's not that I don't struggle with my own worth anymore. It's that when I find those feelings coming up,
mhm,
right? The way that I speak to myself about it, the way that my thoughts move
mhm,
in that situation has changed a lot.
mhm.
10 years ago, I would have been talking myself down. I would have talked myself out of doing something,
Right.
right? You can't do this. You're not good enough at this. You can't work hard enough. Like, you're never going to put in the work that is necessary to achieve this thing. Like, those are the conversations I was having with myself.
Mhm,
Now the difference is, like this weekend, with my family, right? I found that coming up when I was at dinner having a conversation. And so I'm having this side conversation with myself. It's like, Megan, just let yourself be loved.
Mm.
It's
Just be.
okay to just let yourself be loved.
Yeah.
Everybody here in this room is enjoying this situation. Like, we're all having great conversation. We're spending time together as a family.
Right.
You're the only one that's caught in the side conversation, that there has to be
Mhm.
something else with it, right? And then
Mhm.
boom, like that side conversation's dropped. I moved on and I enjoyed the rest of my evening. You know, in business, when I find myself coming up against something that's scary, like moving to New Jersey, or moving from New Jersey and having to hire out, I was like, I can't lead a team from 12,000 miles or 1,200 miles away, but like that's my only option. I also didn't want to give up. The not wanting to give up and close down was fear of failure. Like, that means I'm a failure. I closed my business.
Mhm.
So I had to have that conversation with myself, like, yo, you can either give up and feel
Mhm.
like a failure in this way, or you can
Mhm.
fucking go for it. And if you fail, at least you tried.
Right.
Right. So, like, the way that I speak to myself has changed, and it has changed the way everything moves in my life. And it
Mhm.
changes like how much situations hold you down. You know, shit happens. Are you looking at it positively, or are you looking at it negatively? The way that we talk to ourselves affects
Right.
everything else, because where your mind goes, energy goes, right?
And for
Energy flows, whatever that thing is.
Right. And first you have to be aware though that you're even doing these things. And I think sometimes
For
like we're
sure.
so lost in the sauce that we have no fucking idea that we're even going down that hole where we're saying those things to ourselves. And sometimes you know, it takes like I remember, Meg, you probably said this before, you stopped and said, "Would you say that to me?" And I was
Mm.
like, "No." Well, then why would you say that to yourself? And so I think that's a good like reframe too, like stopping in the moment and like when you're catching yourself there, ask yourself, would you say that to someone that you loved? And if the answer is no, you
Yeah.
should have no business saying that about yourself at all. You
Yeah.
know, I think the other thing too, like to go back to what you were saying, Meg, where we get caught like pushing ourselves down or saying like, no, don't even try that. Like you're gonna fail at that. A lot of times we're looking at the problem and not the solution. And this is very
Mm-hmm.
common. We see this all the time. I see this coaching all the time where we're so hyper focused on what could go wrong that we have like we can't see the big picture. We couldn't see what could go right. And again, like what Meg just said, if you think that you're going to fail, you're going to fail. But if you think that there's a chance that you could succeed, even if it's just a small chance, chances are you are. So it's
Oh
all
yeah.
about how you view things and how you see it in your brain first. And that is why too meditations, visualizations, like all those things, even though some of you may think that's so like woo woo, right? I mean, I was one of them back in the day, but now I realize why it's so important, because it's
Yeah.
all upstairs first, and you have to embody what you want to see in your life first. You know what I mean?
Right. What you tell yourself is what you're going to believe.
Mhm.
Your brain can only work from the information that you give it.
Yes.
And so if you are somebody that like needs research, look it up because it exists. They have done
Mhm.
research with athletes, among like athletes are the main population. Elite athletes are where they do a lot of this stuff, but like visualization is a huge thing. If you
Mhm.
talk to most any Olympic athlete, they are visualizing their routine, they're
Mhm.
visualizing their course, they're visualizing the outcome of their game
Right.
before they ever step onto that field,
Mhm.
right? And it's important in building the muscle that is your mind.
Mhm.
Because if we don't work that muscle, it's weak, right? And then one thing pokes you and you fall off.
Mhm.
So when we practice this over and our brain actually doesn't know the difference. This was taught to me when I was first learning yoga, and I didn't get it at that point, but they're like, if you have a client that can't do something, maybe they have physical limitations, right? And they can't do a down dog because they're in a wheelchair, tell them to sit there and visualize it, because your brain doesn't know the difference between you visualizing something and you actually doing it. Okay.
Mhm.
They've measured the brain waves. They're the same.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you visualizing yourself having success in something over and over and over, even you visualizing yourself loving yourself, right? We're talking
Yeah.
about self-love and self-worth. Let me bring it back to that. Like visualizing it and feeling in your body,
Mhm.
and maybe even practicing meditation, what it feels like to just love yourself unconditionally, the same way that
Mhm.
you would hope other people would love you, and the same way you hope to love other people,
Mhm.
is going to help ease the process in the learning, right? It takes to start to actually feel it,
Mhm.
to know yourself as love.
Mhm. Right. Only love can mend, like
It's really
criticism,
true.
self-criticism tears down. It breaks you apart.
It does.
But love
It
can
does.
mend all things. Like, it is the highest energy that we have, the greatest frequency we have, right? And I know that sounds, again, so woo-woo and, lovey-dovey,
Well, we're
whatever,
woo-woo
but
here, so take it or leave it. That's what you
it's true.
get.
Like, like, it is the greatest feeling. And so we need to have it first for ourselves before we can really give it away as freely as we want to, in the
Yeah,
world.
absolutely. It just amplifies our ability, right? If you live in that energy, it amplifies your ability to send that energy out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got to start somewhere. We can't expect it to start with other people. We
Mm-hmm.
can't ever change the way. We can't change the past. We can't change the future. But what we can do is affect how we feel right now.
Mm-hmm.
So to just kind of bring this home, guys, take a second, take a few minutes, really. A second's not going to be enough,
Mm-hmm.
to think about what makes you feel like you're not worthy. Write it down and look at it and really take it in. Like, these are the criteria that you've set for yourself that's made you decide that you are not worthy. And then I want you to write a list of all the good qualities about yourself. Okay, just to see them hand in hand. They don't mean anything except for to
Right.
just know what they are.
And
And then I want
sometimes,
you to go ahead.
I was saying, sometimes it takes two. I think this is helpful. Writing down all the things you've been through. It doesn't even have to be qualities, but like, what in
Yeah.
your life have you gotten through? You know what I mean? And they're still standing here another day. Because sometimes we
Yeah.
don't realize our own strength until we actually see it on freaking paper, the things that we've been through, the shit, storms, and all of that. And then we realize, wow, you know what? I actually did have strength in that moment, or I did have courage then. Courage has to come before confidence, guys. You don't just decide you're going to be a confident person. You have to pursue courage first and take courage. It's something that you actually physically do. You take action with courage,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
again, recognizing that you've had moments where you had to take that courage, I think, can be really powerful as well.
Yeah. It's movement through fear, right? So like we were talking last week about the wood and the water. The water is all about fear. Okay. And it can hold you still. But if you have courage and hold both of those together, right? You can have courage and you can have fear and you continue to move. That's how you move up into the wood. That's how you create that transformation in the fire that we're looking for. Okay. That's where you get yourself to the place where you can go back and you can reflect and you can see your value.
Mm-hmm.
Working with the metal, with the fall, you can let go of what no longer serves you, those old stories that you are not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then it takes you back to the water. And you get to repeat the process. And every time you learn a little bit more about yourself, you learn
Mm-hmm.
to love yourself a little bit more deeply.
Mm-hmm.
So write out those lists, take a look at them. The one that makes you not enough, rip that shit up or burn it and just let it go. It is no
Decide.
longer a part of your story. Yeah, decide. And
Mm-hmm.
when Lauren says decide, she doesn't just mean I wake up one day and I decide that I love myself and it's over. No, you decide over and over and over and over
Yep.
again, especially in those moments where you feel like you are not enough.
The best way to compare it is like, it's like not loving yourself is almost like an addiction. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like, choosing to love yourself, choosing the right thing over and over and over again until your body just does it. Your brain just does it. And it takes a
yeah.
lot of freaking work. And there's days that you're still going to slip up and you're going to have to remember and decide again that I'm going to love myself no matter what, or I'm going to decide that I'm worthy. Because I
Yeah.
truly think that is probably our largest epidemic, is not loving ourselves and not making that decision for ourselves. So we
I
got for
hope you
you
guys enjoyed
today.
this one.
You are worthy.
You are worthy. We love you.
Yes. Love you guys. See you next time.